Yo, those Cape Town public order police. Woohoo! Alafat ni kak ni asile say in Afrikaans. Alufagwa.
Now they all ran.
Some crazy scenes coming out of Cape Town, where the EFF, of course, led by their attention whore in chief, a one Julius Malema, had promised, of course, that they would descend on the community of Brackenfell and, as they put it, would shut everything down, as they put it. It seems the police were not having that. Yeah. Seems the police were definitely not having that. And not only did the police in that part of the world, by the looks of things from a distance, of course, came very prepared with not only public order policing, I saw water cannons being fired at the EFF, tear gas was thrown into the crowd, and the police were dropping them stun grenades on those crowds. Because again, by the sounds of things and the various accounts that we're hearing from journalists, is that, you know, the agreement was that only 100 EFF members would be allowed to go to the school to hand over a memorandum. There are some other reports I saw in Times Live saying, no, the number was 500. I'm not sure which it is. I'll be interested to keep an eye on that. But the EFF, true to form, decided no, they'll do their own thing. You know, they seemingly cared very little for what appears to be something which was instructed to them by law enforcement in Cape Town. And if there's one thing I've learned about law enforcement in that part of the world, is exactly that. It will enforce the law. Sure. And I've never seen Cape Town cops shy away from using force to do exactly that. At times they'll do it erroneously, but in many occasions too, they will meet public violence with, you know, a measure of force that quickly quells it. That's for sure. So I've never been under the illusion when it comes to Cape Town that somehow that wouldn't happen, and I'm surprised the EFF are surprised themselves that you know, their rule breaking would be met by the cops in that kind of way. So interesting to see what's happening down there. As always, keep safe, people. If you are, I saw some Christian groups were there praying. I think some parents were still dropping off kids at the school. And yeah, I think just be safe, everybody. But again, I must say this because it goes to the heart of my criticism of the EFF. You know, EFF command is more than happy to put its ordinary rank and file in the line of danger. More than happy to do that. But they themselves will never be the sort of people who take the rubber bullets, who take the water cannons, who take the stun grenades. And I know there's some of them, in terms of their leadership, in inverted commas, who are there. I'm not sure if they were leading from the front, as they always say they will, but it's testament to what I always say about the EFF. The EFF don't actually respect black people. They claim to be pro-black. They make a lot of noise about being pro-black. But in reality, they only care enough about black people to exploit them. That's the only thing they really care about. The EFF care enough about black people simply to exploit them, nothing more. Because it beggars belief, rather, and it begs the question of why it is that at their protests, they always break the rules in a way in which often it is the ordinary rank and file who are the ones who then meet up with police action. Food for thought, especially if you're an EFF member and you might be watching this. Why is it that you are the one who always takes the rubber bullets and the tear gas and the water cannons? Where's your Julius Malema? Where's your Julius Malema in taking all of that? And a lot of people were asking online. I don't know if he's there already, because this is all at the time of recording this. It's all happening as I speak. But I sure as hell, from the video footage I've seen so far, I've not seen your commander-in-chief leading from the front. Oh, y'all people are being dribbled. The whole fracas just smacks of being totally unnecessary, because by the looks of things, not only is it based on an initial lie, which was then embellished, not only was it then based on a media in this country which ran with this unverified story, even as, for instance, the people they accused of the racism came forward and said, no, this had nothing to do with race, but more to do with our own little social network or social circle of our kids' friends. Even as all of that came out, there were no adult voices in the room that actually calmed everything down or sought to calm everything down. And instead, you saw, on the one hand, and you see rather, let me speak about today. You see on the one hand, a continuous driving of this narrative that the likes of the EFF, I see the PAC was also out there, that they're there to deal with racism. Here's the irony. If you're there to deal with racism, how are you shouting slogans like one settler, one bullet? How is that not racist? If you're there to deal with racists, how are you shouting, as I'm hearing and seeing from some of the EFF people, that you're there to remove settlers, or that the settlers are foreigners in that land? Again, I refuse to be dribbled by people who are seeking to push a form of, tacit form of black supremacy in the name of being pro-black. And these are the hypocrisy, this is the sort of hypocrisy rather, that you've got to call out when it comes to the EFF type. I have no problem with someone who says, look, I hate racists and I'm against racists. I will stand with that person and protest. I'm deeply opposed to racism. As someone who openly says that I would like to build and see a non-racial South Africa, I also will stand with you and protest if there are instances of racism. But what I won't do is support your favored racism, a tacit black supremacy that comes and masquerades in the name of being pro-black. Because there is nothing pro-black about the EFF and a lot of these blavity black types. And I call them blavity blacks because they're the sort who always claim to trade on behalf of blacks, and that their whole identity, they argue, is about blackness. Toxic racialism masquerading and coming at you in the name of anti-racism, this postmodernist nonsense that we're hearing from the SJW white types and the blavity blacks, these people who trade on their race, which is why I call them that. And speaking about SJW whites and how I don't pick and choose who I go after when it comes to my sharp criticism of trendy lefties, the commies and the statists in this country. Here's this white kid now that they are pushing out in the videos. Is gone rather mainstream in the circles of the EFF and their videos. I'm trying to remember his name. Is it Markovitz or something like that? This young chap who's out there talking nonsense. Oh, the DA is white supremacist, he says. Oh, the residents of Brackenfell are poor whites and they're white supremacists. They're just angry and bored. Listen to the crap that this elitist little thing is saying about other people. Does he know the people of Brackenfell to make that kind of claim? Who is he to say that about other people? Who is he to say that? But of course, it's now coming out that this young homie is actually quite privileged, comes from a millionaire family. Surprise, surprise. I've always said this about these SJWs, is that they are the most privileged in society, pretending and claiming to represent the most underprivileged in society. Why? Because it's out of some innate sense of guilt. These self-flagellating social justice warrior whites that I like to make fun of. Equally as bad as the blavity black types, because both claim, or rather both trade on their race, and they do so through a lens of leftism of whatever shape and stripe, whether they are statist in nature, statists being the people who believe that everything must be, or lots of things, should be under the tutelage of politicians and the state, or they're outright socialists, effectively believing that the means of production, Not only that the state should control things, but the means of production should be in the hands of states, right up to the extreme of communists in their ideology. A pitiful lot, who thankfully are a minority in this country, that is lefties, but are a vocal minority, an annoying one at that. So we see y'all, and by the looks of it, the police in that part of the world had no interest in pandering to you guys today. It was very scary and kind of encouraging at the same time to see the police actually taking law enforcement seriously, and that they actually had a zero tolerance for breaking of rules. Again, I must say this because I know it's going to happen in the comments. No one wants to see scenes of violence. No one wants to see scenes of violence. And for as much as I've been accused of, wanting to see the EFF being beaten up or whatever the case may be, that's just simply not true. But at the same time, I'm not going to pretend that the EFF literally being on the receiving end of how they often treat other people is not irony. And it's that hypocrisy which I find amusing. Not necessarily people being beaten up, and that's not what I find amusing, but the hypocrisy of playing victim when you are treated how you treat other people ordinarily is what I find deeply amusing. So my 2 cents therefore would be this: let calm heads prevail in Brackenfell, and let the police enforce the law in Brackenfell, and may the likes of Julius Malema, who continue to incite violence, who continue to enrage and inflame tensions, actually find their comments where they are actually taken to task by the law. That is something that needs to begin to happen now. The rabble rousers, the ones who like talking that tough talk, that war talk, you have a leader of the 3rd largest political party in this country who regularly incites violence against particularly minorities. Things like he'll cut the throats of whiteness, he tells us. Things like, oh, we're not calling for the slaughter of white people yet. These are quotes that have come from the leader of the 3rd largest political party in this country. The same guy who, in tweets, when he suggests that they're going to protest somewhere, will often say, fighters attack. That's the guy who then wants to have his people play victim when people respond to his nonsense, or when law enforcement responds to his nonsense, as we're seeing today. Because I can tell you now, I can almost telegraph where this is going to go. We're going to get play-by-play, back-to-back in the media, his friends in particular, his friends in the media, those pockets, say, oh, the police attacked them unprovoked, and, they were just victims, and blah, blah, blah. And then from the EFF types, we'll hear, predictably, oh, those police are white supremacists, we'll hear, taking cue from their Markovitz friend. The police are white supremacists, black police officers, by the way, will be called white supremacists, or that they were there to defend white privilege and blah, blah, blah. It's amazing how it's always someone else who's wrong in the EFF's book. They're never wrong. It's always someone else who's wrong. Man, that's clown world stuff. That is clown world stuff. So in that regard, in this particular instance, kudos to the police, man, for simply enforcing the law. Because I can tell you now, if it had been parents who also acted in that way, and the police responded, I would actually genuinely say kudos to the police. Because that's one thing as a takeaway we need to start seeing much more of. The police in this country taking the rule of law and law enforcement much seriously and applying the law in an impartial way. And anybody who's there who is breaking the rules, let there be arrests of those individuals. It's my 2 cents on this, man. As we see the peaceful protests of the EFF, photos of them literally carrying weapons to this peaceful protest. I will not be dribbled, and you too should not be dribbled, least of all by the EFF and those commies. That's my 2 cents on this. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment. Maybe you disagree with me. Tell me how you disagree. Don't just call me names. Like, actually think, dear lefties, and argue, debate, reason with me. Let me hear what you have to say. And if you're out in Cape Town, keep safe. And a reminder to you, regardless of where you are in this country, is that you should never trust a commie.